the next thing I was going to talk about was the power of identity. And here's something. I was going to start by just sharing a story of a local story, and it illustrates not only the power of identity, but a change in the environment that I'm suspecting most of us did not experience 25 years ago when we were in high school. I was talking to someone on the staff of Churchill High School this summer, and they were telling me that they have to switch the staff bathroom to be a special bathroom for students who were born a particular sex but identify with the other gender. So there's 14 students right now at Churchill. So not only does I think that point and just help us remember constantly that these children do have a different environment than we grew up in, but the power of identity. What do you identify? Do you identify yourself as a student, as a violinist, as a musician? And I'm not quite sure how that works for young children. I can't personally recall from my experience, but I was going to share with you a story. We have a young student in our studio. The student has just turned 4, and her parents called me at the age of 2.5, and they said, I just wanted to say this was not a family that was trying to push music on their child in any way. They said, we know that our child's too young to start. She won't stop begging us for it. She won't. So they said, can we start to take lessons so we can just learn some proper technique and help get her off to a healthy start? So that started at 2.5, and this child proceeds to play for hours a day. She just longs for it. It brings her a joy that lights her up like fireworks. She has an unusual capacity for the violin. She begs her mom to play scales for her while she's going to bed. So instead of the bedtime stories, will you please play me your scales? So the mother gets that. The parents both took lessons.
Yeah, we get that all the time.
Yeah. Just take a moment for that. She, like I said, she just turned 4. Who does she want on her 4-year-old birthday cake? It's a Perlman. Was on her birthday cake for 4 years old. She would take a cane and pretend to be It's a Perlman and walk around the house. So she's thinking about music constantly. And when she was 3, hi Katie. I love Katie. She was just 3. Her mom, again, a very benevolent, organic environment. It's really neat to see. Her mom said to her, oh, honey, do you want to be a violinist when you grow up? And she said, I'm already a violinist. So that's, again, an illustration of the power of identity. And then I wanted to share with you a story about identity and how that actually, a study that they did. So I'm going to go into my notes here and just look that up. All right, forgive me for reading from a book. This will be the more scholarly book reading portion of our talk here. But I found this study pretty compelling, and I want to take it and run as a teacher, but I don't even know how to do that. But what they did, do you mind if I just read right from a book? I'm sorry. I don't think I can paraphrase this. So in 1997, Gary McPherson set out to investigate a mystery that had puzzled parents and music teachers since time immemorial. Why certain children progress quickly at music lessons and why others don't. He undertook a long-term study that sought to analyze the musical development of 157 randomly selected children. He took a uniquely comprehensive approach, following the children from a few weeks before they picked their instrument out at age 7 or 8 and through high school graduation, and that's an important detail. He tracked their progress through a detailed battery of interviews, biometric tests, and videotaped practice sessions. After the first 9 months of lessons, the kids, it was a typical mixed bag. A few zoomed off like rockets, a few had barely budged, but most were somewhere in the middle. And skill was scattered along a bell curve of what we intuitively consider to be musical aptitude. But still, the question was, what caused this curve? So was it inevitable, just a descriptive chart of what happens among any randomly chosen population who are striving to master a skill? Or was there the hidden X factor that explained and predicted each child's success and failure? And I think that's our curiosity, right? And our passion. What is there an X factor and what is it? So going on, he started to analyze his data to try to find the reason. Was the X factor IQ? No. Was it oral sensitivity? No. Math skills? No. Sense of rhythm? No. Sensory motor skills? No. Income level? No. So again, no correlation yet in his study. He then tested a new factor, the children's answer to a simple question that he'd asked them before they even started. So this is, again, starting at age 7 or 8 through high school, almost a 10-year study. The question was, how long do you think you'll play your new instrument? Mostly said, I don't know. But when you kept digging and asked them a few times, eventually they would give a real answer. And he had to quantify them, as studies do. Data has to be quantified. And the categories were short-term commitment, medium-term commitment, or long-term commitment. The next part of the study, he measured how much each child practiced per week. So there was a low, 20 minutes a week, medium, 45 minutes a week, or high, 90 minutes a week. And he plotted the results against their performance on a skill test. And the graph looked like this. Here's an image here. And what the person that did this study said, he said, I couldn't believe my eyes. The differences were staggering. Based on the child's identity, if they just identified, yeah, I'm going to be a musician for the rest of my life, versus maybe a year or two, there was a complete correlation with their success and their performance. And for him, the results as quantified in the study were that with the same amount of practice, the long-term commitment group outperformed the short-term commitment group by 400%. I think that's staggering in terms of identity. And I don't know how to take that and run with it. So what I'm trying to do as a teacher is constantly call your children musicians, young musicians, violinists. You're a violinist. My fear, and maybe you have this as a parent, is they'll say, well, I don't want to be a violinist. We don't want that to gut against heads. So I'm still inquiring on that. But I think we can think about that in terms of even being a student, being a learner, the value, the overall value that had. And that leads me to why I started to work on this presentation. So this is a story, and as you know, 3 years ago I did go back into school, and I explained to you a little bit about why, the crossroads that I went into that. Sophie, thank you. We wish you an incredible rehearsal. So proud of you.
I'm going to see the rest of it.
Oh, we'll put it up online for you. So here's what happened. Here's where this part of the presentation came from. So I went back to school, full of chutzpah, and I was ready to spend whatever time it needed to get A's, to excel. A friend told me later, they said, we could tell you're a little stressed out because we invited you over for dinner and you emailed us back and said, I'm too busy, maybe in 9 months. And I'm so glad they reflected that back to me, because I really, really put my head into a world and did that. But here's where I hit a wall. I always could work hard, was raised to work hard, and actually love working hard. My boyfriend jokes, he says, you actually hate fun. He does. And in some ways, that has some truth in it. I'm working on that. And I would wake up and I would do all the reading and I would do all the homework wasn't enough. It didn't matter how much I had read, how well I'd taken notes, if I had test taking anxiety and I flipped the numbers around. It didn't matter how much work I did if I started having panic attacks in my statistics class, which I did. And it didn't matter any of this if I was just so stressed out that I could just read and it just was like water off a duck's back. I could spend hours reading and not even tell you what I read. So I really had to search for that other echelon of life skills, success skills. So much of this is I had to look at my own identity. I had a colleague at Lane Community College who was talking to me. She said, you have to identify as being a student. I said, I guess I hadn't done that again. I had been maybe a little unexcited about that element of my life. So I had to embrace that. I had to look at creating a culture. I got a new book bag. Things like that were fun. I had to get new school supplies, little things like that. And all these things, again, mindsets. I just had to change my mindset about challenge. Find a way and challenge. So all these things have led really to some pretty interesting terrain. And so the last